The ceiling cracked before I even heard the warning bell. A deep, grinding sound rolled through the great hall, and dust fell like snow from the golden beams above us. I was standing near the back wall, holding a drink I never got to finish, when the whole east side of the palace roof gave way. People screamed, chairs fell, the floor shook so hard that plates slid off the long feast tables and shattered across the marble. I dropped low, covering my head, waiting for the stone to reach me. It did not. When the dust settled enough to see, I realized the collapse had stopped just short of where I stood. That was the first shock of the night. The second one came only seconds later, and it changed everything. I am Daniel Whitmore, and 8 months ago, I never imagined I would be living on another world, working as the only human inside an alien royal court. My job was simple on paper. I was a liaison, a bridge between my people and the rulers of Vescariel, a kingdom built around a single queen and her line of daughters. In practice, my job mostly involved answering strange questions at dinners and trying not to offend anyone by accident. The queen had 2 daughters, Naira and Sela. To everyone else in that palace, they were not children, they were future rulers, shaped and trained from birth to lead. Nobody hugged them, nobody let them make mistakes. Their whole world was built around duty, and duty alone. I never understood that kind of life, so I never tried to follow its rules. When I first met Naira and Sela, I treated them the way I would treat any curious kid back home. I taught them simple games. I let them ask endless questions about human hands, human food, and why my skin turned red when I stood in the sun too long. I laughed when they got things wrong. I never once tried to correct their posture or their tone, the way every guard and tutor around them always did. I did not think any of that mattered until the night the ceiling fell. The moment the dust began to clear, I heard fast footsteps, not from soldiers, but from somewhere closer to the ground. I turned just in time to see Naira and Sela running straight toward me, both at once, without a single moment of hesitation. They did not run to their mother, who stood only a short distance away, already surrounded by 12 armored guards trained to protect her with their lives. They did not run to those guards either, even though the guards were closer, faster, and far better equipped to protect 2 frightened girls. They ran straight to me. Sela reached me first, gripping my arm so tightly it left marks. Naira came right behind her, pressing close to my side, her whole body trembling. I dropped down and pulled them both behind an overturned table, shielding them as more dust and small pieces of stone rained down around us. For a moment, none of us spoke. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, mixing with the sound of the girls breathing hard beside me. I did not think about danger. I did not think about the empire, or the politics, or the fact that I was a human touching royalty in a way that was completely against every custom in that palace. I only thought about keeping them safe. When the shaking finally stopped, silence spread across the hall like a wave. Servants and nobles slowly rose from where they had ducked for cover. Guards rushed forward, weapons raised, scanning the room for danger that had already passed. And then every single eye in that hall turned toward us. The queen arrived seconds later, moving faster than I had ever seen her move before. Her robes were torn at the shoulder, her crown slightly crooked, but her eyes locked onto her daughters immediately. She reached us in a heartbeat, kneeling down beside us on the broken floor, ignoring the dust and debris completely. For a long moment, she said nothing. She looked at her daughters wrapped tightly around a human stranger, instead of standing behind her own guards, instead of running to her. I could see something break and rebuild itself behind her eyes all at once, faster than I could understand. Naira finally lifted her head and looked at her mother. Her voice came out small and shaking. She said that when the ceiling started falling, she did not think about guards or safety plans. She only thought about finding somewhere she trusted completely, and without meaning to, her feet had carried her straight to me before her mind even caught up. Sela nodded beside her, still holding onto my arm, as if letting go might undo the safety she had just found. The queen turned to me then, and for the first time since I had arrived on Vescariel, I saw real uncertainty in her expression. She asked me quietly why her own daughters, raised inside the safest walls in the entire kingdom, surrounded every day by trained protectors, had chosen a stranger from another world, over everyone they had known their whole lives. I did not have a perfect answer. I only had the truth. I told her that I never asked her daughters to be anything other than what they already were. I never treated them like symbols of power or future weapons of the throne. I simply treated them like children who deserved kindness, patience, and someone willing to listen without judging every word they said. The Queen stayed silent for a long time after that. Around us, healers moved through the hall checking on the injured, while guards worked to clear fallen stone from the paths leading outside. The night was far from over, but the danger from the collapse itself had passed. Still, something new had begun. The moment those two girls chose to run toward me, instead of anyone else in that entire palace. Over the following days, the story spread quickly through every level of the court. Nobles whispered about it in hallways. Guards spoke about it quietly among themselves. Some saw it as strange, even improper, that two royal daughters had shown such open trust toward an outsider. Others saw it differently, as a sign that maybe kindness carried more weight in a crisis than titles or training ever could. The Queen never spoke about that night in public, but her actions afterwards said more than words ever could. She assigned one of her most trusted officers to work alongside me during palace events, not as a guard watching a threat, but as someone learning how I approached her daughters so differently from everyone else. She began attending some of the small lessons I gave the girls, standing quietly in the back, watching without interrupting. Naira and Sela never apologized for what happened that night, and I never expected them to. As far as they were concerned, there was nothing to apologize for. They had done exactly what their instincts told them to do in a moment of pure fear, and their instincts had led them to safety, not by rank, not by training, but by trust, built through simple, everyday kindness. In the weeks that followed, the palace slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Repairs began on the damaged section of the Great Hall. Feasts and ceremonies resumed. Life moved forward, as it always does, after a moment of chaos fades into memory. But something between me and the two young princesses had changed permanently. Sela began seeking me out, even during quiet afternoons, simply to talk about nothing important at all. Naira started asking harder questions, not just about human customs, but about courage, fear, and what it truly meant to trust someone completely. I found myself thinking often about that single moment when the world seemed to be falling apart, and two girls raised to rule an empire had chosen, without thinking, without hesitation, to run toward the one person who had never asked them to be anything other than themselves. It was not a grand act of heroism on my part. I had not fought off danger or displayed any incredible skill. I had simply been present, patient, and kind, day after day, without expecting anything in return. Sometimes that is enough to earn a trust deeper than any guard, any title, or any throne could ever provide. Months later, when new ambassadors arrived from other worlds, eager to understand how a single human liaison had become such an important figure inside the royal court, I never had a long or complicated explanation for them. I simply told them what I had told the Queen on that dust-filled night, kneeling among broken stone with two frightened girls holding on to me, as if I were the only safe place left in their entire world. I never asked them to be anything except what they already were, and in the end, that turned out to be the only thing that truly mattered.